everybody, it's Jenny from the Missouri Star Quilt Company, and I've got a fun project for you today. Take a look at this quilt behind me. Isn't this great? And doesn't it look like so much work? Well, wait till I show you how to do this because this is super easy. So to make this quilt, what you're going to need are 2 packs of print squares, 5 inches, and we've used Blooms and Bobbins by Melissa Mora for Riley Blake. You're also going to need some background squares of 5 inches and 3 inches. And so we went with yardage on this, and the yardage we used for this was 2 1/4 yards. Our outer border right here, this is a 5-inch border. We used a yard of fabric for that, and our backing right here, isn't that a pretty backing? The backing we used was 3 3/4 yards. And so it makes a quilt that is 57 by 65. So it's a great size. This is a good picnic size quilt. And when you see how easy it is, I just think you'll want to make them. So what we're going to do is, this is a disappearing 4-patch block. I know you can't really tell it, but that's what it is. So we are going to take 2 squares of print and 2 squares of print and 2 squares of background. So we're going to lay it out just like this, like a 4-patch. See how that makes a 4-patch? We're going to lay these on top of each other, and we're going to sew them together and just make our little 4-patch. So we're sewing 1/4 inch right down the side, and I'm just going to lay this right on here. Line these up carefully, and then go 1/4 inch right down the side. Now I'm going to do the same thing to this one. You'll notice that it's laying color up. When you put one white side up and one color up, then you know they're going to fit together as a block. And this is one of those quilts that once you make one block, you know I always make one first to make sure it's going to work. Then you can chain piece them all day long, and it just goes so quick. All right, so we're going to open these up, and it should still look like a 4-patch, and it does. And we're going to lay these right together. And again, so 1/4 inch right down the side. And we're just going to stitch a few. I like to call them anchoring stitches. And then I come to the middle, and I make sure that those 2 seams, one is going this way, one is going the other. They're nested together. You can't feel any space between them. I sew to that part, and then I match up this end. Alrighty. So now let's press this open. And we have us a nice little 4-patch. All right, so I have a little rumple in that seam. I know it's turned over, so I'm going to turn it over and press it. Make sure it lays down. And this one too. Sometimes, you know, when they get a press going the wrong way, sometimes it's hard to convince them. All right, now we have a nice little 4-patch. And you want that to lay pretty nice and flat because now we're going to cut it. Now the normal 4-patch is cut at 1 inch. And I wondered what would happen if I just cut this at 1.5 inches. So basically that cut is up to you. You can cut whatever size one you want to cut. And I am going to cut this at 1.5 from the center seam. Just like this. But wait a minute. I can use my rotary mat for this. So this will make it a lot easier if you have a rotary mat or if you have a small cutting mat that you can turn because you want to, you know, this makes it just makes it so much easier. Okay, so here we go. I'm at 1.5 inches from that center seam right there, and I'm going to make a cut on all 4 sides. And so carefully lift your ruler and turn your mat. And again, if you don't have a rotating mat, just use a smaller cutting mat, and you can just pick it up and turn it. And one more here. Make sure these stay lined up. We don't want any crazy blocks in there. And then I'm going to do one more turn over here. And again, one of the things that's fun about this block is that this cutting measurement is really up to you. So you could go tiny or bigger, whatever size you want to do. All right. So now we have this block that's cut on all 4 sides. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to swap these 2. And I'm going to swap these 2. And then I'm going to turn this center block so that the color lines up with the big block on both sides. And now we're going to sew this back together. So I'm just going to lay these together like this and do this first little section here, and then I'll add these other ones on the other side. So I'm just going to go 1/4 inch, and I'm going to keep them all connected. And then I'll sew the next 2. These 2, you want to make sure these 2 seams line up right here. So we're going to lay these together. And if you're putting them on and you've got color on color, you know it's wrong. So watch that, because there were a couple of times I was putting them together and I had forgotten to turn that center square. And I was like, whoop, wait a minute. You know, because when it's, you know, these are supposed to be opposites. All right, so here we go, another. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these out and I'm going to flip these over now and start from the bottom. So the first square I'm grabbing is the bottom square. And you actually can do this any way you want. This is just the way my brain works. Okay, then this one. And again, make sure you're putting color to background, and then your center is, you know it's right. And then one more here. Now, take a look at it, because it should be exactly as you laid it out. You should be able to now just fold these rows together and make them work. So we're going to go here, and we are going to sew this one. Make sure those little seams line up. And one more I'm going to check here. Feel it with my finger, and it's just nice and nested. All right, now comes the other side, and we're going to do the same thing. 1/4 inch seam right down the side, and match these up. Let's see there. All right, this way, and then this way. I kind of let the seams go the way they want to go. You know, some of them kind of have a mind of their own, and I just let that happen. And then I'm just going to press this. Make it nice and flat. And make sure there's no pleats or folds. Flip it over. If you have seams that are going, you know, that you want to go a certain way, this is the time to do that. And we've got this darling little block here. Now comes the fun of this block. So what I've done with this block is I'm going to take a 3-inch square, and I'm going to snowball these 2 corners right here. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lay this corner in here, and you can draw the line or iron the line from side to side. I'm just going to press a line so I can sew. But you do either one, whatever one you like best. If you're going to press the line, make sure you lay it so that the crease is, you know, the V is going, that you're sewing in the V instead of on top of the mountain. And so I'm going to put one of these on both sides like this. I'm just going to lay it in here and match it up. And again, you know, for another change, a whole nother quilt, this square could be a different size as well. So don't be afraid to play with these blocks. You know, I just think that's kind of fun. I'm going to take off my guide here and just sew straight on this seam. We're not sewing on both sides, we're just sewing straight. I've matched the block up in the corner, and I'm just sewing straight across. So again, I'm going to turn this one, match it up in the corner, and then I'm just going to sew straight across. And this is a 3-inch block. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to trim these off like this. One more cut. Then we're going to press those open. And we have this darling little block. Look how cute this is. Now the fun for me in this block comes in the layout. So let me just show you how that comes together. Our layout back here is very simple. And I did that so you could see how simple this was. I put them all going the same direction. So my snowballed square, always to the upper left. And you can decide, like if you want, you know, all your blues, you want to put them blue and pink together. This depends entirely on your fabric line. You're just going to sew those together, and it's going to be awesome. But the fun for me is in the different things that happen when you start playing with this. So if I put this together like this, with all my whites in the corner, and one more, let's see. Oh, this one hasn't been snowballed. That's why this is messing me up. I'm going to add 2 snowballs to that real quick so I can show you this design. Hang on, I better put a line, because this is really fun. So, you know, part of the fun for me is when you go along and you're making something and you're like, oh, you know, you lay it out differently and you didn't see that happening. And I love that part. All right, so let me add these and I'll just trim them off real quick, but then you'll see what I'm talking about. Alrighty, so I'm just going to cut these off. I'm going to grab my scissors real quick. You can see there's loads of ways to do this. Rotary cutter, scissor, iron a line, draw a line, change your measurements. This is so versatile. All right, so let's take a look at this. All right, we've got this together now. Now, in this fabric, it's a little hard to see, but this makes a star. It makes a star when you do it. So I made it in 2 colors so you could see it. And this is what you get. Isn't that something? You know, you do the 2 color fabric and all of a sudden you have a whole different block. Now you have to know that if you put this together on this quilt, block after block after block, and I know because I've tried it, you lose the star. You know, as you line up the next one, these center triangle blocks and square blocks take over and you lose the star. So if you want to keep the star, you're going to have to sash it. But how cool is that? Just by moving these around and doing something different, you know, you get a whole different layout and a whole different quilt. So this is really fun to do. It's fun to play with, change the layout, see what happens if. But let's take a look at our quilt back here for a minute. So we've got ours all set up so the blocks are all going the same way. And we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 across and 7 down. And again, that makes a pretty decent sized quilt. But don't be afraid to play with this and try some new things and see what's going to happen if. Change your measurements if you want, change your layouts. This is a great little quilt to make. And we hope you enjoyed this tutorial on the Snowballed Disappearing 4 patch from the Missouri Star Quilt Company.